Well, we're finally on to a new region of the country because we are talking about the NFC South today. And our first team up when we go through these southern divisions is going to be the Atlanta Falcons. Here we go. All right, first thing we got to talk about these new uniforms. All right, so um, I guess I'll just go with the picture I'm looking at. The throwback to like the '90s era stuff still looks the same. It looks good as it always has. Um, the fully black looks good. The fully white also looks clean. Now, the red faded into the black. I'm not sure how I feel about it, but on that uniform, I have to give them props for throwing that in because I really have wanted a team to do like some sort of faded color scheme on their jersey and see how it looks. So, thank you to the Falcons for being the team that tested it out. Now, the white jersey with the black pants, that looks good too. Black jersey with the white pants, that also looks good. The one uniform I'm kind of like on is the white jersey with the red pants. That looks kind of questionable. Maybe they could rock a black jersey with red pants. That would look a little better. I don't know. But here we go for what happened last season. They went 7-9 last season. They started 1-7 before the bye week, and that hurt them pretty terribly. I mean, had a strong closeout to the season though. So I mean that beginning of the season was really bad though. Here are my notes. Julio has some of the best hands in the league. Also positions himself perfectly. You know, when you got a ball that's thrown. Matt Ryan's still throwing a lot of good passes, but if there's something that maybe like I'm specifically thinking of a deep ball he had, where he had the defender beat, but instead of continuing to run and get to the ball spot, he like delayed his feet so that he could keep his positioning in front of the defender and shield him off. And then once the pass came in, he continued and stretched his arms out and caught the ball. Also, I mean, his hands are extremely strong. It's great. Next, Calvin Ridley, great number 2 option. He's also like the toe tap king. He had some great catches along the sideline, back of the end zone type stuff last season. It's just that a lot of them came not only at the beginning of the season when they were losing, but at the beginning of the season in sort of garbage time, so there were probably a lot of plays that people didn't see. Also, tremendous body extension. He's not as tall as Julio, but the body extension really helps him. Would have helped if Devontae Freeman had gotten going earlier in the season. It didn't really seem like he was getting going very early. But overall, Devontae Freeman had a great receiving season, which was kind of weird because everything I saw from Devontae was really basically receiving. I can't even remember seeing a single run play from him that was like, oh, that was impressive. But he still somehow got to like 600 yards on the ground. Also, I forgot about Brian Hill kind of showing some flashes. I mean, I say some flashes, but I mean, he only had like 300 yards and basically being any number 2 running back in the league for any team over most of the season will probably get you 300 yards. So he's returning to the Falcons, but I don't know how big of a deal he actually is. Season turnaround really started in the second half of the Seattle game. They didn't come back and win, but they really put up a fight in their Seattle game, which was the week they dropped 1-7, so their 8th game of the season. And from there, it turned around a lot. They had very few sacks in the first 8 weeks. That also hurt them. But they got 6 sacks against New Orleans and won by 17. So that was like, whoa, where'd this come from? Kenyon Barner is a good return man. So he looks like he had pretty good averages for both punt and kick returns last year. So hopefully he returns for them. And if he does, then the kick return department will look good for them. Matty Ice still got it. Like I said, he's putting passes where they need to be, and definitely don't think the quarterback position is anything that needs to be looked at for Atlanta. I mean, he was an MVP. I can't remember I think he did win that MVP trophy a few years ago, but he may have only been a candidate. But I'm pretty sure he won it. I mean, he's a plenty good quarterback in the league, to say the least. Also, Jaden Graham, some guy in the tight end room, hadn't really thought about much. But Hooper left, and Hooper's production was huge, but Jaden Graham showed some flashes, so maybe he's a guy that could do something next season, be important for them. Also, Young Ho Koo is the reason the onside kick rule wasn't changed the other day when they voted on the potential 4th and 15 rule instead. And I think that's pretty funny because he's like the only guy who's been able to kick onside kicks since the run-ups were completely eliminated and everything. So it's nice to have a weapon like that. Olamide Zaccheaus may be my favorite player from this season to just randomly score a touchdown out of nowhere, like an impressive touchdown that a lot of people see. He scored like a 90-yard reception touchdown against the Panthers, and it was just fun. I just like that name, is Olamide Zaccheaus. Then, Younghoe Koo also recovered a fumble at the Panthers' 17-yard line on a kickoff, and I just wrote, he is a weapon, just on the kickoff unit in general. I mean, onside kicks, he's going down there making tackles. It's great. I love him. Also, by the end of the season, it looks like his kicking percentages for extra points and field goals were both higher than Matt Bryant during the season. So it looks like the idea to go to Younghoe Koo was probably the right idea. I mean, just seeing what he brought to the kickoff unit and just at least equaling or surpassing Matt Bryant in the field goal game was also good. DeMonte Casey snagged multiple interceptions this season, so he looks like a good player. Didn't really hear about him much prior to last season. I don't even know. He may have been a rookie this year. So he looks good. Vic Beasley still looks fairly unblockable along with Grady Jarrett, but Vic Beasley left, so that doesn't matter much. But Grady Jarrett is still on the team, so that's good. Zaccheaus also scored on kickoff team on the last play against the Niners. And by the way, they beat the 49ers at the end of the season, which is crazy. They beat the Super Bowl runner-ups, and they went 7-9 last season. But the second half of the season, so you take 7-9 and you take out the first 8 weeks, they went 6-2 in the last 8 games of the season. So, I mean, I think I've said this before in some of these videos, but I really like the idea of finishing strong and then moving into next season with some, what's it called? Just, I don't know, heating up. Let's say that. They're getting hot at the right time going into next season. Okay. So, obviously, since it was a Hooper contract year, they needed to pull out all the tricks week 17 and try a new guy at tight end. So they threw a tackle at tight end and scored like a 30-yard touchdown against the Buccaneers, which is just absolutely tremendous. I loved that. Also, they closed the season on the Deion Jones pick 6 in overtime against the Buccaneers, which is great, but no one's really going to pay attention to it. And the fact that they ended the season 6-2 because the last play of the season really shined more for the fact that Jameis had hit that 30 touchdown, 30 interception mark in the same season. Also, running game was pretty just lackluster entirely last season. Like that needs to change this upcoming season if they're going to win more total games during the season. Also, Hooper high production, but they probably think they can find a replacement for him because he wasn't doing anything crazy. He was. I mean, there wasn't any like crazy impressive plays that he was doing, but I think they can replace him, and they got a few options that I'll mention later for that. The one thing that I didn't like about Matt Ryan's game is it's his highest interceptions total since 2015, so keep that down. Try to get that under 10. I think that's like a good number to shoot for. If we can keep it under 10, if you hit 10, that's a little more than one every other game, so I think that's an okay amount. Trufant led the team with 4 INTs, but he's gone, so whatever. A guy named Isaiah Oliver had 11 passes defended, but didn't notch an interception, but 11 passes defended is nothing to slouch over, so I figured I'd throw that in there. That was pretty cool. Maybe he can be something pretty good for them opposite their new corner. Devondre Campbell led the team, 3 forced fumbles. Not really a crazy total, but he did. Beasley Jarrett, close on sacks. Then a little from Claiborne as well. Campbell was the tackles leader in front of Deion Jones. Grady Jarrett was the tackles for loss leader. And as I said before, Younghoe Koo is slightly better in the kicking game than Matt Bryant was. Also, injuries last season. Okay, we got a lineman in Chris Lindstrom, who's notable. That's a name I've definitely heard of before, so if they were missing him, they missed him for significant time. That's a big deal. Keanu Neal, J.J. Wilcox also missed almost all three of those guys, missed almost the whole season with injuries, which, big deal. And just of note, 3 other safeties also popped up on the injury report last season. So that the safety department of the secondary was really hurt. So it'll probably help to get a lot of those guys back, especially if they can at least keep the group mostly healthy next year. All right, now what happened in free agency and trades? But I think there's only like one guy to talk about for trades in here. So they got Laquan Treadwell. You know this guy from Minnesota. Big hype around him coming out of college. Didn't really do much, but hey, if you got the hype in college, that means you have the potential. So we'll see what he does when he comes to Atlanta. Plus, I mean, Russell Gage did okay last season, but I wouldn't really say that anyone in the Falcons locker room has that third receiver spot locked up. Then here's the guy they acquired in trade, Hayden Hurst. That's a good pick. That's a good pickup. I just really think it's funny that Hayden Hurst got selected before Lamar Jackson by the Ravens in that draft because they had 2 first-round picks in that draft, and that's just wild to me. It's crazy, and they trade him within 2 seasons, and the other guy's the MVP. All right, next guy, Kari Lee, XFL player, former Buffalo Bill. That's probably more of the reason I have him on here, but he played pretty decently in the XFL. He's also going to be in that tight end room, and once again, another potential Austin Hooper replacement, and they've got a lot of these Austin Hooper replacement guy ideas, so I think one of them will click in there nicely. I don't know which one it'll be. If I had to put my money on anyone, I'd say it's probably going to be Hayden Hurst, but can't say for sure. Then they grabbed Dante Fowler, who's a good replacement for a guy that they lost. Todd Gurley is definitely a huge acquisition, especially with how poorly, as I stated earlier, the on-the-ground department was, and I just saw an article that said that Falcons management was very confident in his health. So if that is true, that will be great for them, but I mean, it didn't seem like the Rams were not confident in his health, so all right. And more recently, they got Deion Buchanan signed to their team. I added him. He's a name that I've always found interesting, but I guess he's never really played exceptionally well. I think he could, maybe in a role with these guys. They've got a large group of linebackers now that are very good coverage linebackers, or more fitting that Deion Jones type, since he's their middle linebacker now. They've got a lot of guys in that room that play similar to him. Also, they traded a 7th-round pick for Charles Harris, a defensive lineman from the Dolphins. That's a name I heard before, so I was surprised that he only went for a 7th, but we'll see what's going on there. And now we'll talk about who they lost. I already mentioned Austin Hooper. They've got all those tight end replacement options. Offensive guard, Wes Schweitzer. They were missing the Chris Lindstrom last season, so he may be able to replace him, but they also drafted a nice interior lineman that I like here last in the draft in the 3rd round. So they got 2 guys there that are potential replacements for Wes Schweitzer, who they lost in free agency. And obviously they lose a big group of D-line and edge players here in Vic Beasley, Devondre Campbell, and Adrian Claiborne. That's huge. Plus they lose Desmond Trufant, but hopefully I like the top 3 guys that they picked in the draft. So hopefully that they can help along with the guys they acquired in free agency. Hopefully they can help fill in some holes that were made from who they lost, at least. So AJ Terrell in the 1st round is a solid corner. He'll just basically replace Trufant. So you look at those draft picks and it's like, well, it doesn't upgrade the team, but it's something that needed to be done, so I think it was the right decision with Trufant leaving. Then in the 2nd round, they get a guy named Marlon Davidson from Auburn. He's a big man for an edge or or end really. He's a big guy for not being a D tackle, but he utilizes size and speed in his game, and I think it works well, complements each other well, and he could potentially replace one of those guys, either at the edge or end position. Then third round pick, they go Matt Hennessy. I really like this guy. He looks agile and strong for an interior O lineman. So once again, good pick there. But then fourth round, just a guy named Michael Walker. He's a prototype linebacker. He looks, like I said before, they're trying to get a lot of those guys in the linebacker room that play similar to Deion Jones, and that's what this guy is. Another fourth round pick they had, Jalen Hawkins, a good player, but I'm not crazy impressed with him. He's a safety. He'll probably just end up being a backup if we're going to be honest, so I don't think he'll be a key player to this team. And then from the fourth round, they only had one pick left in the seventh round, which was Sterling Hofrichter. If I'm saying that correctly, that name definitely looks German. And he's a punter. He's a punter, which gives them, I think, 3 punters on roster currently. And I would say the only reason that this may work is because they've got a kicker with an obviously, foreign name, being Young Hoku, looking very Asian, and then Sterling Hofrichter with a name that looks German to me, I'm guessing. So maybe the powers of having those foreign kicking group will just make them crazy good, and they'll have the best special teams unit this year. But now let's get into who they have to play this season. So, easiest way to start, we talk about those divisional opponents. Carolina, New Orleans, and Tampa Bay. All right, I don't know about Carolina. I look at Carolina and I like what they did this offseason, but boy, the roster is not talented. So I think they'll probably beat Carolina twice. Look at New Orleans and Tampa Bay. Those teams are going to be a lot better, and I think those teams are both going to be really talented teams, quite possibly 2 of the best teams in the NFL. So saying that, I don't think they're going to win most of those games, but I think they could take 1 out of the 3 of those games. Like I usually say, probably 1 of the home games, so I'm saying in the division they go 3-3. Then from there, they got the Chicago Bears at home. I'm not really confident in the Bears. I'd say I'd probably take the Falcons in that straight up, just because Bears are not anything that I'm too impressed with, and the Falcons will be the home team. Then they've got the Lions coming to town, which will be Desmond Trufant already returning to Atlanta. I think they'll win that one too. So started out 3-3 in the division. They'll grab those 2 wins, 5-3. Denver Broncos at home. They could win that one, but I think Denver's going to be a good team, so I'll say loss there, 5-4. Oakland coming there. That'll be hard for Oakland to win. I didn't predict the Raiders to get a lot of wins. I'll say that's a win for Atlanta. That gives them 6 wins and 4 losses going into against Seattle. They almost beat Seattle at home last year, and that was before they got hot. So let's say they keep the hot streak going, and let's say they beat Seattle at home this year, which will put them up to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 wins. So 7-4 after their home games. And then here are all their road games that are non-division road games. 7-4. Then they've got to go to Minnesota. Actually, let me just start with the ones that I know they're not going to win. They got to go to Kansas City. They're not going to win in Kansas City. You can basically call that 7-5. They got to go to LA. To LA. They could go to LA and win. I think I kind of like the Chargers, but I don't like the Chargers' home field advantage. So I think you could throw that in Atlanta's favor. So 8-5. Now here are some more interesting matchups. 8-5, but they've got Minnesota, Green Bay, and Dallas left. I don't really like any of those 3 matchups for Atlanta. Minnesota, Green Bay, or Dallas. But at the same time, I think this hot streak that the Falcons got on at the end of last season is really important. So even though I don't like them in any of those matchups, I think you could throw them in as the winner for at least one of those. So with that, We had them at 8-5. They dropped 2 of those 3. That'll put them at 9-7 for a final record, and I think that's where I'll predict the Falcons to go next season. Yeah. So, if you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching.
2020 president candidate.